all right. What's going on, my freaks and geeks? This is the Square Roundtable podcast. I want to thank our viewers and listeners so much for joining us this week. And guys, for joining us every week and downloading our podcast and all that good stuff, guys, that really helps. And once again, this week, we're bringing you an amazing podcast, just like every week, guys. And we are so honored to be joined this week by visual artist and illustrator, best known for the Goosebumps series, which is like a big thing that we're going to be talking about all night. I'm so sorry, Tim. but I would love all of our viewers and listeners to please give a very special warm welcome to Mr. Tim Jacobus. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Hey, guys.
Yeah, thank you. We really appreciate all of it. Like I say to all of our guests, I'm just so thankful that you guys respond to the emails. I'm so surprised every time. Thank you so much for that. But one of the things that I just want to jump into, just like we do with every one of our guests, we like to do just a mental health check. So just asking how you're doing. Everything is just everything. We're just trying to keep our heads on straight. So we just want to make sure you're good. Like, how have you been doing lately, Tim?
Yeah, everything's good. I got as I get older, I appreciate life a lot more. And we're in a good space here, and I appreciate you asking.
No problem. We are definitely glad to hear that. We feel the same way, definitely in a good space. And we're just glad to be able to talk to people that really shaped our childhood like you. So thank you so much for that. And we're just going to jump right on into it. One of the things that I wanted to know about you initially, just get a little background. So first of all, like, where are you from? And obviously you have a big career with visual arts. So what kind of sparked that passion for you early on?
I'm from the Northeast. I grew up in New Jersey. I've been in a 20-mile radius my whole life. I've moved 3 times. And I think it was 2 things that got me into graphic arts. One was my dad. Not that he was a trained artist or anything, but he knew how to draw. And he used his ability to draw to communicate. So if we were at the dinner table and he goes, "Oh, I'm thinking about building a deck on the back of the house," he'd grab a pencil, flip over a napkin, go, "And it's going to look something like this." And he used it as a communication device. And as a kid, that clicked with me, and I started to do the same thing. And I didn't realize. Yeah, so we used it a lot, him and I mostly, and in the house. I have 2 sisters, and it became a form of communication. Also, right next door was my best friend, and he liked to draw as well. We ended up continuing to draw together in grade school, in high school, and we also went to art school together.
Wow.
And I don't get to hang out with him as much as I used to, but he's still somebody that I talk to on a regular basis. And so the art being in the mix of things has been there really since I was a child. So none of us, me and my friend next door, his name was Drew, me and Drew, it wasn't that it was talked about that art could be a career. We just did it to do it. And it really wasn't until way later. I was a senior in high school before somebody approached me with the idea that, hey, art, you can do commercial art, and art is a career, and this is something that you may want to pursue. And so I think that was an advantage, because we were never looking at this as a monetary thing. It was just, hey, we rode bikes, we played sports, we went swimming, like we did all that kid stuff. But then every once in a while, you would just plop down on the floor and grab the pad and draw some stuff, and just that being part of you, rather than, oh, I got to work on this because I got to further my career. That was never the basis to it.
But now I think that's an interesting thing, because a lot of us here, well, literally all of us, I mean, Marcus and Joshua, we're all visual artists. We love to draw ourselves. And I think about the kind of duality of having your passion being your career also. Was that something that you were worried about at any point, or something that you faced, of just, okay, having the deadline make it as something that you would just fall out of love with or get frustrated with? Was that something that was a thought for you?
See, and that you're bringing up some very interesting stuff. So this is things that you guys and your generation would think about more tthan we did. It was more reactionary to us. First off, I was 17, 18 before it's even dawning on me that there's a career out there in the arts. So now I'm going, now I'm excited about it. And the idea of getting into it too deep, or that this thing that I do because I just like to do it now becomes a career. And then do I not like it as much because I have to, it's part of the mix and you have to do it as compared to want to do it. And I didn't get all that stuff came after the fact. I never thought about it. You just got there and then went, oh, that, because that's a real thing. When art becomes your money maker or your career or something that goes from the I want to do it now to I have to do it now, it changes its shape. I can tell you from being in it this many years that the thing that made it really exciting and fun to do when I was 18 is still the same thing that makes it fun to do at 63. And I always try to compare it to, imagine if you were a professional baseball player. Mm-hmm. And Aaron Judge, come October, if they're not winning, he's had it up to here with baseball. He's ready to go home, play some golf, anything else. I'm done with this for the season. I need a break. And so you'll get that kind of attitude with your art where you're going, all right, I've been at a lot of deadlines back to back. I've been sitting here a long time. I need to do something else. But again, that's normal. If you love the core activity of sitting and being creative, I don't know what your guys' angle is at graphic arts and what you do, but if the core activity of it still excites you, then you're in the right spot. And that's really when I have to sit down and a new job starts and say, okay, we got to come up with something here. That's the excitement of we have nothing and we better make something happen. And it's still exciting. And I'm still amazed that you go to the well and there's still another water comes up out of I should have dried up a while ago. And the fact that they still keep coming out it's still exciting.
I like that.
Yeah. Tim, I would like to ask you, so would you kind of say that 17-year-old you is like still motivating you as you keep going on and on about it? Like how you were so excited then, is that kind of like sometimes you tap into that?
Oh, sure. Yeah. My father, he died when he was in his 90s. And I got a chance to talk to him about, like, what's it like getting older? Yeah. Like when you get up in the middle of the night and you walk in the bathroom and you look in the mirror and there's an old dude in there. And he said, it's funny. He goes, until I look in the mirror, he goes, somewhere around the age of my late 20s or my early 30s, my mental image of myself stopped there and locked in. So inside me, I'm still a young man, but the outer shell keeps getting older, but inside I'm still that young guy. So I still have a little of that, and I knew what he was talking about. So yeah, I never forget that I'm really lucky. There's a huge luck element to being in the position that I got to. And it's never lost on me that there was a little magic in the system. But the idea that if I was Tim, the insurance salesman, who liked to paint on weekends, I still think I would be happy about it. Like I would still be thrilled to be Tim the painter as a thing that I did on the side. So I don't know if doing it as a living or just pursuing it and enjoying it as part of my life, I think it would have still been the same. I think the enjoyment on either level would have been the same.
Awesome. Yeah, because
this is awesome.
Because I always say that, I always joke with people and say that, like with me, if I'm drawing or if I'm writing or just trying to come up with an idea, it's like I always kind of talk. It might sound crazy when you say it, but I talk to like my 10-year-old self because that's what's gonna give you like the craziest ideas. And that's when I always say your younger self is the most imaginative person that's in you. And the longer you keep that person with you, it'll always drive you to have an imagination. But if you just lock it out and be like, okay, I got to be a grown up now, I got to do this, I got to do that. It's okay to be a grown up, but at the same time, you got to keep that kid in you because they always driving you to be like, okay, remember when you used to just go outside and make up something and it made absolutely no sense, but it was a whole world and everything was there for us. And it helps you because I know a lot of times it'll help me. It is funny because I'll be like, okay, Marcus, you still got it a little bit. That guy's in there.
I like that. Yeah, I never looked at it that way. I like that. Yeah, the innocence of you didn't worry too much about the big picture or what other people thought or any of that stuff. You were just you free forming, and yeah, I like that. That's a good one.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Oh, what were you gonna say, Jared?
No, you're good. Go ahead.
Yeah, like basically just like more free time to draw, less bills, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good point. The weights of being a grown-up weren't there. Your only concern was keeping yourself entertained. The rest of it was taken care for you. And that's a good point.
Yeah.
The funny part is, were you about to say, John?
Oh, yeah, you can finish.
Oh no, I was just gonna say just backing off of the point that Tim made when you're just talking about being a kid and growing up and then having your passion and kind of just sliding into the career path that you weren't even aware of that was there. The thing that I think is crazy today, and I'm not trying to age you at all by the statement, but you know, a lot of
but all right, I know how old I am. I got a driver's license in my pocket. It tells me how old I am. I know.
I just the biggest thing is, so we have such an ironclad mechanism for how to do things now. Like when you go online and you're applying for these things or you're growing up, you know that, yeah, this Cartoon Network is a place, you know what I'm saying? That's a company and they have artists that work there and they say, hey, well, you can work here as a career, or Goosebumps is a thing. And people are like, oh, I want to do that. I want to have that as a career. So it's just like, I wanted to know how that process would be, just like falling into something, because we talk to a lot of artists in different fields that are around your age, and a lot of them say the same thing, from being a visual artist to a voice actor to even a video game designer in certain spaces. When they started that career, it was just the thing to where they just like to do it, or it was just something to get by, and then they did it again and again, and then it just turned into this big thing instead of them jumping into it from the beginning, like, this is my career and this is what I'm going to do. And that's one thing that a lot of people can't avoid these days. You just can't, because the thing exists already.
Yeah, but so I can only speak from my side. But when I look out at you guys, I go, Jesus, you guys have such an advantage for all the reasons you're talking about. Like you can see that there's things right out there that are very attainable. And then say you're learning to, you're an oil painter and you're trying to figure out a technique, man, you can go right on YouTube and go right in there and go, hey man, I'm there. All of a sudden there's 8 videos of people showing you all different techniques, and you can learn so much so easily. It's right there and it will push you down the road. I think it cuts both ways, but there's such an advantage to being able to see other people do stuff, know that it's there. It's that thing when, all right, you go back a couple of years, and I forget the guy's name, Pastrada, the first guy who takes the motorcycle and does the backflip on it.
Oh, Travis Pastrana?
Yeah. So he's the first guy to do it, or let's just say he's the first guy to do it. And he makes a video of that, and it goes out there. Within 2 weeks, there's 42 guys who can do it, because he proves that you can do it. Everybody goes, that can be done. So now it becomes a thing. So the idea that you can look at art in the same way, you can see what other people are doing, you can see how they're doing. In your head, you can go, this can be done. So the idea that things are impossible those are way lessened. And that's the kind of crap that will derail you early on if you start with the I can't, it's impossible, nobody's done this before, like any of those big giant negatives. I think you guys can get past them a little easier than we could fall into that site in 1972, where there's 3 black and white TV channels and radio is AM, and there's nobody speaking to you about this stuff, and you're just going, I have weird thoughts and I don't know if I'm normal. Or now you guys can go out there and go, oh, I am totally normal.
Exactly.
A perspective.
Yeah, for sure. Just considering stuff like that, how are you able to just like create your art style off of this limited information?
I prefer limited information next to when it comes to actually creating a piece of art. So if an author reaches out to me and says, oh, I got this book, I only want a little information from them, because if they give me the book, I'm going to read the book. And now I'm feeling so compelled to get into the weeds and do every little nuanced, nitty gritty thing. And it may kind of constrict the art. I don't know if you've ever heard me talk about this before, but when we were doing the Goosebumps covers, R.L. Stine was writing the book at the same time I was doing the cover. So I couldn't read the book because it didn't exist. So he would always give me the title of the book and just a couple of, sometimes a paragraph, sometimes only 2 sentences that said, this is what the book's about. And I love that, because if you only give me a little, it's hard for me to get it wrong. And any direction I go in, you can't yell at me because it wasn't there. And it really gave freedom to do stuff. And for whatever reason, R.L. Stine and I really clicked. It really worked well together. And the fact that we were never having ongoing discussions about, oh, we worked together we did Goosebumps covers together for over 2 years before we shook hands.
Wow.
Yeah, and so we were always separated by the people at the publishing house. I worked with the art directors. He worked with the editors. Communications were through other people. But like I say, for whatever reason, my style and his style we merged together. And we're not similar guys. We're 2 completely different people. I love him to death. He's a good guy and I love hanging out with him. But the idea that if we were lined up by personality, there'd be nothing that would make you go, oh, yeah, Tim and Bob, they go together. There's none of that. Yeah, I like less information, but from the big picture of what we were talking about earlier, of just me not knowing, like, that there was no YouTube or exposure to, oh, you can be a book illustrator. I think there's a lot of value in ignorance. So if you don't know how scary it is, then you're not going to there's nothing to be afraid of, because you don't know how scary it is. So you get out there and you just go forward. And I know, looking back now, that if I knew everything I knew now when I was 17, and what nonsense I was going to go through in those first few years, I'd go, maybe I'd try something else. There might be an easier way to do this, because when you commit to this stuff, at first it's all cool and everybody's behind you and your parents are thrilled and your friends think it's cool. And then as you're in it for a while and you're grinding away and you're barely paying your bills, if you are paying your bills, then after a while people are going, why do you keep doing this? It doesn't seem to be panning out. And at some point you're going to have to do something else. Conversations come up. But for me, there was a point where I went, I don't know how to do anything else. This is all I channeled for. And to turn around and go back and try to learn something else to go this way, I was like, nah, still easier to keep going forward. This is what I know. This is what I do. I'm good. I'm just going to continue forward. And luckily, all those pieces started to fall into shape. But yeah, I remember having one of those birthdays where I'm working in a machine shop, doing my art at night. And it was when I turned 25. because I remember going, oh, by 25, I want this, those stupid things where you put markers down and go, oh, by 25, I want this to happen. And at 25, nothing was happening. It was, I forget, I had something happen, but not worthwhile. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm not hitting, I don't have those, I didn't meet that goal or whatever I said. And then I was like, keep going, just keep going. Yeah, there's value in ignorance. Every once in a while, you gotta just say, screw it, keep going.
One thing, and I do have value in ignorance as well. One of the stories that I've heard from just listening to a prior podcast that you were on, I thought was really cool. Was this around the time when you were drawing food? Is this around that time?
No, that was later. That was when
that was later.
Was good.
Oh wow!
Those were in the victory days.
And I love that story because correct me if I'm wrong, but you were saying something along the lines of you would be able to get the. I forget, how were you able
I'll tell
to
the
eat?
story.
Yeah,
No problem.
definitely.
Yeah, when you're getting illustration jobs at the beginning, you can't be saying stuff like, oh, I only do horror or I only do science fiction. I'll do anything. Just the idea that I get to sit at home and draw and paint something and you're willing to pay for it, I don't care what it is. So one of the gigs that I got was for the grocery store A&P. And the way it used to work is in the Sunday paper was the only paper where they would print color. And there was a big spread in the coupon section that they would pay for. And it was a full page ad, and they would paint pictures of food because photography back then was still lame. And they had their heavy hitter artist. I was the backup artist. And so he got to do the big spread, the really nice giant piece. And then there was always 3 or 4 other little side spot illustrations. So I was the spot illustration guy. And for what it was, these were still life stuff that you used to do in art school, except now it's whatever's on sale. They would give you a list of food that needed to be painted for the week, whatever the specials were. And they had this cardboard box full of photographs. And they go, okay, dig through the box, and you're gonna need an Irish soda bread, and you're gonna need carrots are on sale, and whatever it was. And you'd rummage through the box and you'd get the pictures. And then every once in a while it'd be like, there's no asparagus in the box, no pictures of asparagus. And they go, all right. Their offices were above one of the supermarkets. So they would go downstairs, and on your way out, just go, yeah, I'll walk you out. We'll just take some asparagus off the shelf and give it to you, and you can have real asparagus and use that as your reference. And you would go, I would do this. I would show up on, we used to show up on Monday, and you would have you had to turn them in on Thursday so that they could be in the paper for Sunday. And this was a good gig because every week you weren't getting rich, but you're making a couple $100 painting pictures of food, and it was all, and you got good at it. You crank it out and crank it out. And eventually I figured out, oh, if there's no photograph, they're going to give me food. So if we go in there and it's, roast turkey's on sale. I like roast turkey. So I would make sure the photograph of the roast turkey would conveniently get lost. They send me down to the store. They give me a whole roast turkey off the shelf. I'd prop that bad boy up and do my drawing of it. And then when I was done, I'd pop it in the oven. And so not only did I get my artwork for the week, I got my food for the week. So it was a super good gig. And we did it for a long time. Actually got to the point where I actually got a couple buddies to help me out because I got busier. And I was working on paperback book covers at the same time. So I would bring them in and they would start them. So they had to look like I did them. So these two guys had a style that was similar to mine. They would begin the pictures, then I would take them and I would just tighten them up at the end and put my spin on it. And a few of us made some money off of that. Yeah, that was a good one. Not glamorous.
said, hey, if you just so happen to lose the picture of the fried chicken.
Oh no, what
I don't know what happened.
I have
Right,
no
like,
idea where it went. It was here
right.
last time. Yeah,
Lost the picture of the pack of donuts too.
that's
Like,
right.
The
oops.
whole box is empty today. I
It's
don't know
gone.
what.
I don't know what happened, man.
I decided to paint a picture of one with a big bite out of it. How's that?
They'll never notice.
They'll never notice. Exactly. Oh my goodness. So this was, I'm trying to get a timeline here. So I do know that you were saying that you also work for Scholastic, like before you even partnered with R.L. Stine. So
Yes.
how did that, just a two-parter. So as far as that, how did that come with Scholastic? And as far as you were talking about when things started to fall together, because obviously you guys, you're partnering on a horror book for children. So you want to make a book that's visually appealing, but you're also doing the balancing act of not completely terrifying children. So how did that come together for you two? When did that kind of, I guess, like, when was was it a lot of trial and error before you got the design down for how you wanted to do the books?
I got out of art school in 80, 81. The 80 and 81 was when I finished up art school. It was when I got out of art school and I went and I showed my portfolio to my first book publisher. I got somebody who was an established artist, took me in with him, not to get a job, but just to go, I'm going to take you with, it was one of my instructors at art school. And he said, I'm going to take you with me. I want you to come in and see how it is. Watch me deal with an art director and see what it's like so that you get comfortable with the idea of when you walk into an art director's office, this is what it looks like. This is what, just get into the rhythm of things. He said, also bring your portfolio because this guy will look at your portfolio and give you his opinion. And got out of school. We went into this guy, my instructor, a guy named Paul Stinson, incredible artist. Again, back then, all art was traditional. So he had this portfolio case. He whips out this piece of artwork that was just mind-blowingly good and presents it to the art director. They talk. As they're talking, you look around the room and there's nothing but incredible artwork leaning against the walls all the way around, side by side, all the way around this guy's office. And they're probably 4 deep. There's hundreds of pieces of incredible art. So already I'm in way over my head. And guy was very nice. He looked at my portfolio and what he said was, he picked out 2 pieces and he said, yeah, I really like these. And of course, those were the most current stuff from my last year at school. And he goes, your portfolio looks like a school portfolio. He said, if you want to get illustrations in the book market, you need to show up here with nothing but pieces that look like book covers. So I suggest you go home. He goes, a half a dozen, 8 would be good. You don't have to have a million of them, but show up with pieces that are, so when I look at them, I go, oh yeah, I could see this on this, and you leave the room for the text and all that stuff. So I walked away a little discouraged, but not discouraged, and spent the next couple of, now I'm out of school. I got to work. I'm also married at the time. I got married when I was in art school. That's another, we need a whole nother podcast for that one. So I got to work and do the portfolio at the same time. So it took me probably a couple of years to get that portfolio ready to go and take it back into the city. I finally get my first piece. It was 84, maybe 85. I have to go back and do all those numbers, but we're getting into the mid 80s. So finally get my first cover, and that's the linchpin. Once you have one, then you can go down the street to the next publisher and go, so-and-so at so-and-so gave me a job. Here it is. He trusted me. And then they go, oh, if he did, everybody knows everybody. Live 40 miles outside of New York City. So it's easy for me to get in and out. And all the publishers are, at the time, were in New York. So I had accessibility to get in and get out and show people my stuff and still drop off stuff, get art directors to see it, go home and go to work, come back, pick up stuff. You had this whole crazy routine of shuffling your work around. I did it for a couple of more years after that, was getting work, but not steadily. And you're hanging on. You're getting 3 covers a year. That ain't doing it. You got to get a lot of covers a year to be paying your bills. But I got a few more. Then one of the art directors said, hey, you really got to get yourself a rep, somebody who can run around the city. He goes, you're here too much. You should be home painting. You're running around the city. I met, and he suggested somebody. And once we put that into place, then this guy went and got to work. I got to stay home. And then real production started to happen. So and this guy's name was Sal Baraka. Sal got me into a lot of different publishers, and Scholastic was one of them. So we had worked with them a couple of years, maybe 3 years, and I was doing young adult books, some science fiction, some fantasy, always a little weird. My art always had that flair to it. Didn't do any horror at that point, minor horror stuff I did. And when the Goosebumps thing came along, to your point, Chad, they were incredibly worried about this thing being way too scary for kids, because nobody had tried a horror series for the 7 to 11 age group. They had done it for the older teenage kids, and they knew they could get away with a lot more, but they didn't know where the line was on that. And every time they talked about it or did studies or whatever they used to do, they were always getting negative feedback on it. So the idea that Goosebumps would be a success, that was very far away from everybody's psyche. Everybody was just going, let's just try this. Let's see what happens. I was approached and they said, listen, we're not quite sure if this thing's going to get off the ground. We got R.L. Stine. I didn't know who he was. He said he's a real established guy. We're not quite sure if this is going to go anywhere. We're not going to pay you what we normally pay you for a book cover. We're going to cut some money off because we're trying to save some money here. If you do this for us, I promise you, we'll get you on something else. If this doesn't work out, you'll be doing us a favor. And I looked at what they asked me to do, and the first one was Welcome to Dead House. And I went, oh, yeah, this is right in my sweet spot. I could definitely do this. So they chose me to do book number 1. And then they chose a different artist named Jim Thiessen to do book number 2, Stay Out of the Basement. Now, Jim Thiessen was a very established horror guy and a great artist, like I said, very established in the horror genre. And they said, yeah, he's going to you do book 1, he'll do book 2. Whichever one we decide, we'll do the rest. And the rest there was only 4 or 6, I think, originally scheduled for the entire series. That was it. And so it wasn't like this was this is a huge competition, or, oh, if I don't get this, I'm going to die, or like it was just another thing. And so I did my Welcome to Dead House piece, and Jim did his. And when they got done, it was exactly what we just talked about, where they said, these are both really cool. We like what Tim did with the colors, because I was using that saturated palette, and they're going, yeah, this makes it less scary. We like this. So let's go in that angle. You'll do the next couple of book covers. And if you're familiar with the Goosebumps stories, R.L. wrote Welcome to Dead House, and Welcome to Dead House is a little edgier than the ones that came after. He was still writing with that hard edge that he was doing for his other series. So even he realized early on, that was a little harsh. Let's soften this thing. Again, I didn't know where we were going with it. And then, so they said, okay, yeah, you get to do the next couple. And when we got to Say Cheese and Die, I went, oh, I get it. This is silly too. There's a comic element to this. And I was like, oh, I know where to go with this. This is going to be fun. So once I hit that and was like, all right, lots of color. If you put a little humor in it, we're still doing horror, but you can also be ridiculous, because the ridiculous, as we moved down the road, it got as ridiculous as it could be. And there's a killer sponge that lives under the sink. I don't know how much more ridiculous you get than that. Yeah, so the start was, oh, this isn't going anywhere. Nobody cares. There wasn't a lot of people paying attention to it, which is great, because then when they say, okay, come up with some ideas, there's not 40 people waiting for your ideas to come in to then comment on it, and everybody put their 2 cents worth of, like working with one other person. She had some ideas, I had ideas, everybody got to present their ideas. So I always did 3 different versions for every cover. And then they'd go, yeah, we like number 2, and then go ahead and paint that one. And I'd go home and I would paint sketch number 2 and finish it off, and I'd turn it in. They'd go, great, start the next one. And that's not how the book business works. Usually there's lots of people, there's lots of changes. It's just the creative part of it gets lost at times. There's pieces that have been so ground down that I've done, not in the Goosebumps series, where you just keep beating it. And by the time you get done, all the cool stuff is gone. It's a piece, but it's as stale as day old bread. So that never happened with the Goosebumps. We were always, again, because nobody was paying attention, I got to do what I wanted. Then Goosebumps they were still early on, and the sales weren't good, and they talked about canceling the series. And somewhere, I think around book 9, you guys were all talking to each other. And again, no internet, no social media, no anything. You're just going, hey, check this out. And all of a sudden, the book sales went from almost nothing to, like, it just made a turn, and they just took off. And when it took off, I give Scholastic a ton of credit. Everybody just said, don't touch this. Whatever we're doing here, just keep doing it exactly the same way, because this is working. It didn't, even though people have a tendency to want to jump in and try to be part of it to make it better, nobody did that. And it just made for such a great work environment for me, because I just got to just do what I wanted to do. And the cool part about the Goosebumps series is usually when you get on a series, it can be a little stifling. So if you're doing Harry Potter, and every book's about Harry Potter, and so Harry's on every cover, and it's always the same kid in the same place. Yeah, you can make it different, but with Goosebumps, man, it was a new kid, a new location, a new monster, everything was new every time. And RL was it just got crazier and crazier. It was so much fun. It was just so much fun.
That's awesome. It really just means a lot to me. I know it does to the guys too, because I swear, like, that you should have seen, and I'm sure you've probably seen a couple of them, but the schools were on fire. That was legit the only reason to go to the Scholastic Book Fairs. Like, that wasn't to get like a cool eraser on your pencil, a really cool bookmark, and to grab like as many Goosebumps books as you could. I remember begging my parents for money.
Think about this. Yeah. And so that was a huge part of it. So as much as I would like to say, oh, it was my cool artwork. Okay, let's get real here. So we established a system that was pumping these things directly into your school. Your school library didn't have cool shit in it. And all of a sudden, now there's monsters in the corner. Number 1. Number 2, then they had these Scholastic book fairs, and they'd say, hey, kid, go home, ask your parents for a couple of bucks for books. what parent is going to go, no, you can't have any money for books?
Exactly.
Of course your parents are giving you money for books. And then you go in there. And so I had a captive audience where what I made was cooler than most of the stuff that was in there. And so you guys, we had a very contained market. So Scholastic Book Fairs had a huge amount to do with it. And I think what made the sales really jump was, first, you guys were exposed to them because they were in your school library. Then after you're trying to get them at the school library and it's hard to get them because some other kid took them out, then it was like, oh, I can get them myself. And that's when the sales went from, oh, they're nothing, to now it went through the roof because you're going out and buying them on your own. And that's really where things changed.
Yeah, it was crazy. And one of the things, like I said, that why I wanted to have you on the show was like, because of course Stine is amazing writing, amazing author, amazing, one of the horror greats for sure. But it's one of the things initially, before you get to reading the book, you have to scope it out, and the picture is what is what draws you in. And one of the things that kept progressing for me personally as an adult, one thing that I would look at, I would see the book and see, okay, this is something I'm interested in, but I would love to just go to used bookstores and find whatever stuck out to me the most. And what you did really, that just stuck with me, and it happens with a lot of people. And one of the things that I did want to ask you, because one of the things that I'm seeing right now, I was actually watching another podcast that talked a lot about your work and talked a lot about a lot of other early to late 90s horror covers and just like what they mean to draw people in. I don't know how you feel about a lot of the current work that's being done with a lot of the kind of, I think, like the less is more technique, or it's just before it's like you said, it's a small painting, it's a big deal, to where you just have something now and you have a book that might be the scariest horror story in the world, but you can't tell from looking at it. Like, how did you feel about a lot of the recent trends and cover art for these kind of books?
Everything has to change, and all art, whether it's music, fashion, or what we're talking about here, illustrations, they got to go through their own cycle. And what you're sounding like is what all my friends sound like. All my friends are old, and they say old man shit, and they say the music's no good, and what the hell are they wearing, and look at that blue hair and all that stuff. So we got you when you were young. The Goosebumps stuff really hit a spot. The illustration style back then was very elaborate and more dense, and they were real full paintings, where, like you say, now they're more minimalistic, and that doesn't make them bad, it just makes them different. And you just have something that's in your heart, that it hit your spot, and that's your thing. And as much as even back then I saw stuff that was mind-blowingly good, where I just looked at it and said, I don't know how you did that. And then there's stuff now where I see it and it is simplistic, but I go, that's genius. That's so simple, but you conveyed everything that the viewer needs. It's right here. You hit a home run here, because, more isn't necessarily better. More can just be more. And I continue to do the style that I did back then. My art all still it has a Goosebumps flair to it. If you hired me and said, I don't want that look, I can do that too. But most people who are reaching out, who are looking for me to do art for them, are from your generation. They're going, hey, I grew up on Goosebumps. I think it's really cool. I wrote my own book, or I'm in a band and we have a new album, or I'm doing a movie, whatever it is. All the emails start out the same way. I used to be I read Goosebumps when I was a kid. That's the opening line every time. That's what they're looking for. I still love that style. I still love leaning into it. And the more of the challenge now is trying not to do something that looks like something that I already did. And it gets tough because people want you to do, here's what I would like you to do. Do me a ventriloquist dummy that blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Or how about, let me come up with something else. Yeah, let's try something else first. That's the tougher part, is doing stuff that I've never done before. But there's always something new. There's always something.
No, I definitely appreciate that answer. You didn't totally destroy the other.
No. Listen,
I appreciate that though.
I would never do that anyway. Even if I didn't like it, I would still go, listen, one of those guys, when it comes to art, I've been to those art galleries in New York where I walk in there and I go, get the fuck out of here with that. Where you spent no time on it. That's that there's no effort, there's no anything. That's just, you're getting over on everybody here. And whenever I see anything that took somebody's time, effort, and thought, that may not be my time and effort and thought, but I can see that you did something, you gave an attempt here. So I appreciate, I can get past what my tastes are. Listen, I don't like shrimp because I have an allergy to them. Doesn't mean shrimp's not good. It's just not my thing. So I look at their art the same way, where, it may not be my thing, but as long as I can see that you've put some thought and effort into it, then I'm with you.
Sounds good. Definitely my kind
Definitely.
of answer.
Oh, yeah.
And another funny thing about the Goosebump books and their covers is I read those books as a kid when I would collect or maybe steal money from my
I
Right.
hope they watch this.
Right,
I hope
tell the
they
truth.
watch this.
But yeah, like in collecting those books, I mostly primarily remember them now off of the covers. And back then when I was a kid, like I didn't really have, me and Chad to tell you, we just had no computer access at all. So
Whatsoever.
when
Yeah.
I would see like art from what would be like the 90s, I just thought it was all drawn by the same guy. I was just like, oh, okay, so the guy that does the Goosebump stuff, he's that guy.
He does
draws
all of them.
He does everything.
Yeah, I was really busy, man. I was really busy. That's funny because I usually hear the opposite, where people, when they find out that I was the guy who did the Goosebumps covers, they always say, oh, I thought it was a group of people that did them. So yeah, you just flipped the script. I'd never heard I did every book everywhere. I like that one.
Right. Not only did you do every Goosebumps title, but every book in existence.
Every-
in
Yeah,
the
every book in
90s.
Any 90s.
existence, romance
Any 90s.
novels, all that shit. Yeah,
Yeah.
you tell me what you want, I'll crank that out.
Yeah, but definitely just really love that. It's like that really like color deep 90s esque
Yes,
style.
yes.
Especially, and also going back to what Marcus said, it's like being a kid and just naturally soaking up more information and stuff, because naturally you don't really know anything, so you soak up everything. So I was
Everything's new, everything's impressionable, but you did touch on
Right.
something there where you were saying, hey, and we didn't have a lot of computer access. There was a time where paperback books were the major form of entertainment. There was a point where video games were terrible. Access 56K dial-up was terrible. And there was a lot of things that were still in their infancy, and people no Facebook, no phone with pictures on it. Are you kidding me? We had beepers and flip phones. And so that paperback book was a premier form of entertainment. And it was paperbacks and album covers where that was the gallery for illustrators. Those two fields were it. And I was more influenced by the albums. That was my thing growing up, was an album collection, and you'd sit there on the couch and the giant 12 by 12 format. That was what I imagined myself doing, was doing album covers. And the paperback thing, I found that out as I was moving into I want to do albums. So again, the exposure to the tangible is a big deal. But then when you flip the coin and go, all right, now you can go onto the internet and you can find any artist anywhere. You can search by style. There's so much exposure to great stuff now. And it's great. It's amazing. As sometimes it can be overwhelming. It can make it. So I touched on this earlier so I'm 40 miles outside of New York City. And what made it good for me to get in the book business was I was in the radius of New York City and I could physically go there because that's how you did stuff. You had to go and meet people and show them your artwork that you carried in a bag because there was no other way to do it. So the fact that I lived close to New York put me in the game. If my pop moved me out to Pittsburgh, I'm not in the game anymore. Where now you can be anywhere and be in the game, and you can find clients anywhere because you have exposure to them. And you can, whether you paint traditionally and draw traditionally or do it digital, you can still get reproductions and you can send it like the ability to get eyes on your art now is incredible. I have paintings that were on book covers and the paintings in the attic that I know hardly anybody ever saw. And I can finish a piece and stick it up on Instagram and I can get 10 times the amount, 100 times the amount of people to see it in one day. The idea of getting eyes on your art, and that's really all we're trying to do. I don't care if you like it or you don't like it. I just want you to see it and experience it. Because even if you don't like it, that's still an experience and that's your experience. And I'm okay with that. I don't expect everybody to love everything I do. And a little criticism is good for you. But there's nothing worse than the piece of art that nobody sees. Because then, okay, yeah, you got something out of it, but that's not the point. If you guys are graphic artists, the idea is to turn it around and get people to look at it and get them to experience it. That's what makes the world a little bit of a better place. You had nothing, you had a thought, and then you took it and you put it down on paper or however you create it, and now you have something. There was nothing, and then there's something. That's the coolest thing there is in the whole world. Nothing to something, and then getting people to experience it. That's what's great about now that, you have to literally run around with your artwork and show people. And that could wear them out too. I have friends where it's just like, really? Come on, dude. Put that shit away. Come on, let's watch the game.
No, I know that's how our viewers on our social media page are, because we're constantly posting something about our art, our podcast. I know they're like, okay, we get it, guys.
I know, right?
So, because you have the thing, it'll show like this reached 1,000 pages, but you only have 2 likes or something. It's like, okay. So it's like y'all saw it. Y'all just didn't want to say anything about it. It's cool though.
It's cool.
Just like 990 people just ignored it.
Just straight up
Cool.
So you got to get past that too, because it doesn't mean they ignored it. It just means they didn't have enough effort to go, okay, I like that. It doesn't mean they didn't like it either. It just means it's when they are willing to stop and say something negative. That's when you're just going, wow, that hurts. Yeah, you took time out of your day to tell me I suck.
There you go.
But the bold, this sucks. That's easy to get past because that's somebody having a bad day. But if you can say, I don't like this because I think I don't like the way you rendered the guy. If somebody gives you an actual critique and goes, yeah, your foreground is bleeding into the background and there's no depth in this one there was in the, tell me why you think it sucks. I'm okay with that because there's something to be learned. And even if I don't agree, I'm gonna go, all right, well, I have to be conscious of this because there are people who think this way. It's good to get some criticism.
I was about to say, at least make it constructive. Don't just say and then move on. Yeah.
You suck. That's a tough one.
At least butter my toast a little bit.
Just give me something to work with.
Little something.
Exactly. It's okay.
Oh yeah, but Tim, just I know how everybody feels the same way. It's been super tough for me not to just fangirl the whole time and just have a regular human being conversation with you. But I can't say it enough. It's been such an honor having you on our show. Like, really appreciated your time. And the one thing, I definitely don't want to keep you all night. So the last thing I wanted to ask you, just for a couple of artists like us, and for all of our viewers and listeners out there that take the time out to watch our show every week, from such an amazing artist as yourself, what advice would you give to young visual artists trying to come up and make it in their career from an early stage?
So it's less of a, okay, I'm going to skip all my preamble. The best thing that you can do is to treat your art, give it a serious aspect. Look at it the same way you would look at it if you were serious about running a marathon. So you're going to train. And if this marathon's coming up, that 26 miles hard, I need to do this on a regular basis. Okay, I'm going to do this. I've been sitting on my couch for 2 years, but I'm going to do this. So at the beginning, I'm going to just walk, and I'm going to walk for 1 hour, 3 days a week. And then as I start to get a little momentum, I'm going to bump it up to 5 days a week. Then I'm going to start to run. You got to look at your art the same way. You got to carve out time for it. I don't care how much it is at first. It's 1 hour, 2 days a week. But if you stick with it, Tuesdays and Thursdays from 7 to 8, I always do my art. Then you learn to make it part of your everyday existence. And then it becomes part of the routine. Then you expand on that. And you get to the point where you're doing it every day. If you can do art every day for an hour, you will get better. You can't help it. You will get better. And when you make it a part of your life, it becomes a part of your life. So it's not about, after that, it doesn't matter. You're going to improve. Take it seriously. Don't say it's something that, oh, I'm going to wait till I get inspired. That's bullshit. That's one thing I got to say. That's bullshit. Don't, that inspiration thing that's nonsense. There's plenty of things that you can do that are the equivalent of sit-ups and push-ups, where if you don't feel inspired to do something new, draw something you know how to draw. Just spend that hour, even if you're redrawing the same thing, you're building those skills. It's again, sit-ups and push-ups. The more you do, the stronger you get. And that's the best advice I can give.
I love that. Sit-ups and push-ups.
Yep.
Perfect advice.
That's great advice. But
Oh yeah.
that brings me to one last point. What could you elaborate on Dscape Interactive?
Oh yeah, the illustration market, paperbacks, they don't put out, paperbacks are a much smaller market than they used to be back in the day. So I split my day in half. I illustrate half the day, and then I work for Dscape. I'm a art director. We do corporate animation. We use a tool called Storyline. It's an animation tool. It's not Disney animation by any stretch of the imagination. It's more than PowerPoint on steroids. Like, you can do cool things. So we do professional voiceover, music, graphics, and we're conveying corporate messages to people. And I've been doing this for a long time. Again, it's my side gig. It pays the bills. And so it's 180 degrees different from painting and drawing, but that's actually good for my head. It's a pretty cool job, but it's also, I can't wait for the end of the day to come. And I get excited. So, okay, our day's we're down to 4 o'clock. So I start my day really early. I get up at 4 a.m. and I start working. I'm sitting at the desk around 6:30. I'm already starting to do stuff. So the Dscape stuff ends early in the day, 4 o'clock. Then I have my rest of my day is then illustration. And so it's the combination of both. And yeah, that's basically it.
Oh, wow. That's actually perfect because the biggest thing we want you to do, definitely for all of our viewers and listeners out there, you can let them know about your company, let them know about everything that you got going on right now, where they can find all of that good stuff as well.
Yeah, come and follow Tim Jacobus on Instagram. That's where I always post the newest pieces of artwork, jacobusstudios.com. If you want to get some Goosebumps prints, signed prints, and a large portion of the proceeds goes to buying food for a food bank down the street. Buy a piece of Goosebumps art, help out, do a good thing at the same time. Yeah, that's the two best places.
Okay, awesome. And we'll make sure to put all of that good stuff in the description below. So no worries about that for all of our viewers and listeners. And we'll definitely have your social media down there as well too.
Awesome.
So guys, before we all head up out of here, I just want to make sure that all of the Square Roundtable hosts, including our wonderful guests, can introduce themselves one more time before we head out. And as always, I'm your host, Chad Singleton, even though it has Dmitri Clark up there. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here tonight. We love you, Dmitri.
Happy birthday.
Right.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, happy
bro.
birthday.
To Dmitri, by
Big
the way.
30.
Oh yeah, big 3-0.
Wow.
For sure. Yeah, man. We're all
Yeah.
getting old. So.
We
You
got
guys are
shoes
getting
older than
old.
you guys.
I'm only 23, so don't.
We're talking about you, Joshua. But yeah, guys, one more time, if we can all introduce ourselves before we head out. And of course, like every week, I'm your host, Chad Singleton.
I'm Josh Singleton. Hashtag yes. Hashtag no.
I'm Marcus Long.
And I'm Tim Jacobus.
All right, guys, and this has been the Square Roundtable podcast. Thank you so much for joining us again tonight, and we are out.